In this video, I'll be covering extended chords, okay? So among the extended chords, we have types of extended chords like your 7th chord, your 9th chord, your 11th, your 13th. These are the most common, okay? So your 7th chord is literally adding the 7th note of the scale of that particular key to the triad chord, okay? Your 9th chord is literally adding the 9th note of the scale to the triad chord of that key. The same thing applies to 11th and 13th, just simply applying the 11th and 13th note of the scale to the triad chord of that scale. Okay, so let me illustrate this one after the other so you're going to grab the concept in full. So for simplicity, again, let me make this in the key of C for easy understanding. Okay, so starting out from our 7th chord, your 7th chord is simply adding the 7th note of a scale to the triad chord. Okay, it could be major or minor as the case may be. So for instance, if this is your major chord, that's a C major chord in this case, you are simply going to add the 7th note of the C major scale to the chord, and this is the 7th note of the scale. We've added it to the triad chord, and this is simply our C major 7th chord. Okay, so it goes the same way for minor. For instance, if you are holding a minor chord, for instance C minor chord, C minor 7th is simply adding the 7th note of the minor scale to that chord. So this is your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of C minor scale, and you have the 7th, that's this, to the C minor triad chord, and this becomes your C minor 7th chord. So it works the same way for any key. All you just need to do, you identify the 7th note of that key and add it to the chord. Okay, it works for any. So the next is your 9th chord. Okay, so just like major 7th, the 9th is simply adding the 9th note of the scale to that chord. Okay, but wait a second. Remember, your major and minor scales only have 7 notes. So where do we get the 9th, the 11th, the 13th note from? Okay, this is what really makes many students confused, but I'm going to break it down right now. So to make this very simple, I just want you to note that the 9th note of a scale is simply the 2nd note of that scale, but an octave higher. Your 11th note of a scale is simply the 4th note of the scale, but an octave higher. And the 13th note of the scale is simply the 6th note of that scale, but an octave higher. So restricting this to key C, remember your keyboard is grouped in octaves, okay? So these are octaves that actually duplicate themselves all through the piano, okay? So they are just duplicating themselves, okay? So if this is my C major scale, for instance, I can start again from another octave as this. So this is also my C major scale, okay? So this issue of 9th is, I'd say the 9th note of the scale is simply the 2nd. So this is the 2nd note of C major scale, but when it's an octave higher, it becomes a 9th. We call it 9th in this case. So this is the 4th note of the scale. When it's an octave higher, we call it 11th in this case. And the 6th note of the scale, when it's an octave higher, we call it the 13th in this case. So if I say you should add the 9th note to the scale, it's simply this, comparing it to this octave, and the 11th is simply this, which is the 4th note, comparing it to this octave, and the 13th is literally the 6th note, comparing it to this octave. So the same thing too applies to your minor scale of that key. So for instance, if I want to play C minor chord and I say you should add the 9th note of C to this chord to make it a minor 9th, all you need to do is to just relate, okay? Remember, the 9th note of the scale is simply the 2nd note, but which is this, of the minor scale, but in the next octave. The 11th note is simply the 4th note, which is this, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, but in the higher octave. So I'm going to add this as the 11th to this. So if this is my C minor chord and I want to play the minor 9th, I'll just add the 9th note, which is the 2nd. So this is my C minor 9th, okay? So for 11th and 13th, it's the same way. So for instance, your C major chord, I say you should add the 13th notes, the 11th note of the scale to this chord. All you need to do is to remember the 11th is the same thing as the 4th notes, okay? So I'm just going to hold this, add this to my triad, and this becomes my 11th chord, okay? You can even mix it with the 9th, which is this. So it's fuller. You can see all these chords are more fuller and richer, and the voicing is kind of closed than just your basic triad chord. So all these extended chords are simply a way of just kind of getting much more fancy on the piano, okay? Instead of just playing your basic triad, you can just add the 9th 7th or 11th. So just create that kind of different sound, okay? So add more color to your basic triad, and it's kind of give it a jazzy sound, which is thicker and understand, and much more professional. Okay, so I hope you just get the concept. We'll stop here. If you learned something new, don't forget to subscribe and like. Share to your friends who also need always much more confusing, all this major stuff, major 9s and the likes, so that you're going to also benefit from this video. Okay, so don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in our future videos.